Okay, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for jumping back into class quickly. We are looking at third declension nouns. That's what our fun is here. Get out of that screen. Okay, we've met our unisex third declension nouns, our biggest group of third declension nouns. Some of them are masculine, some of them are feminine, but they all behave exactly like aster, asteros, ho behaves. We've met that and we've seen how it behaves. We showed you where in Duff's vocab all those words belong. All the words on that left-hand column of Duff chapter 12, you need to make sure that you learn not only just what that word is and what it means, but you need to learn that it belongs to this vocab group right here. Now, we've gone on and we've met our feminine only third declension noun group. And it's polis and polus hair. All the words in this group will be feminine and they'll all behave exactly like polis behaves. And we've learnt how polis behaves as well, or at least we've seen it. We've been introduced to it as well. So now, now we've got one other group over here that we want to meet, and this is our masculine only third declension nouns. We want to meet them as well. And this group here is a much smaller group. There's only a few nouns in this group, but they're very important nouns, and they're nouns that are going to come up a fair bit in the New Testament. But there's only a handful of nouns in this group, a much smaller group. And our favorite noun for this group is basileus. Basilios, ha. And that means king. Right? Basileus. Basilios, ha. And okay, again, we know that all the nouns that belong in this group here will behave exactly like Basilius behaves. So we've got to learn how Basilius behaves. And here's the answer to that question. This is what the third declension masculine only noun group looks like and how it behaves. It behaves like this. Basilius, Basilia, Basilios, Basilii, Basilis, Basilis, Basilion, Basilusin. Now you can look at that and go, it's a whole nother paradigm, and it is. It's true. But there are some similarities between the third declension masculine only group and the third declension feminine only group. Particularly when we come down here, it looks all very similar. So let me just put these up next to each other for you, and you'll realize, okay, these two are different, but exactly the same, exactly the same, exactly the same, exactly the same. In terms of the endings, exactly the same. And then down here, you just get this extra upsilon in here. Okay? So there is some double up going on here in these endings. It can be a little bit tricky, but it's not all the end of the world. This is going to help us a little bit. But basically, this is how the third declension masculine nouns are going to behave. The third declension masculine only group. Now, as I said, this is a fairly small group. If I go to vocab chapter 13, again, I'm on vocab chapter 13 in Duff. It is that group down the bottom left-hand corner that we're talking about here. These are the ones, nouns that decline like Basilius, and they are, there's only a handful of them. In fact, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4 that Duff gives you at the moment. Archirus is a high priest or a chief priest. Basilius is a king. Grammatius is a scribe or a clerk. And a Hirus is a priest. You can see these are fairly important words in the New Testament. They're going to occur quite a lot, hundreds of times, these couple, 60 odd, 30 times. This is quite high frequency words in the New Testament here. And so, yeah, we need to learn these 4 words. They belong in this little group over here, in this box over here. If you're going to pin the noun on the box, this is where they belong. Okay, now I'm just going to stop that for a second and just check in again and see how we're all traveling, because this is a lot to take in. But any questions? It's actually just a whole stack more paradigms. There's no new grammar here in a sense. Whether you're a first declension noun or a second declension noun or a third declension noun, that doesn't matter. Nominative still means subject. Accusative still means object. Genitive still means of. Dative still means to or for, right? Nothing's changed in those sorts of understanding. It's just changed in the paradigms and the way these nouns tell you whether they're nominative or accusative or genitive or dative or singular or plural. They've got different patterns to tell you that. But let me just pause for a sec here and just see if there are any questions or any clarification that might help people.
Steve,
Yeah.
so I'm looking at a book here at the vocab for chapter 12, and I'm a bit confused because it doesn't tell me the categories according to which you've enumerated them. So if I've got a highlight or something, how do I break up this whole vocab so that I can make better sense of ones that are masculine only, or masculine feminine, or feminine, and yeah.
Okay, so let me go back to vocab chapter 12 here. Let's see if I can find this screen for you. Okay, here's your vocab chapter 12. All right, there's vocab chapter 12. Okay, what I'm trying to highlight to you is that every single, see if I can get this to work here. Can't get my drawer to work. I don't know why. Why can't I draw on this? No. Okay, anyway, all of these nouns here, right? All the ones in the left-hand column of your vocab chapter 12. All of those nouns belong in our unisex noun group. Some of them are masculine, some of them are feminine, but they all belong in your unisex noun group. All those ones in vocab chapter 12. We haven't looked at these ones over here yet. Don't worry about them for the moment. We'll come back to them probably next week. Because if you look at Duff, you'll see that Duff has just got chapter 12 and chapter 13 are just third declension nouns part 1 and third declension nouns part 2, right? So we're basically doing all of chapter 12 and 13. It's all about third declension nouns, and we're all just trying to get our head together about all this stuff together. Duff just thinks it's too much work. We'll just put it into 2 chapters, but it's all the same topic, third declension nouns. Okay, so our first group here, vocab chapter 12, on the side over here, all of these nouns on the left-hand side of vocab chapter 12, you should put them in your box that says aster, asteros. Oh, they're all in this unisex box. All of those nouns, that's where they belong. You with me? Then, if I go to vocab chapter 13, all of these nouns over here in vocab chapter 13, all these nouns over here, anastasis, gnosis, dunamis, lipsis, chrysis, paraklesis, pistis, polis, syneidesis, all those nouns there belong in your feminine only box. All right, so you should put a rubber band around all those nouns, put them together in one group, and make sure that you know that all those nouns belong in this feminine only box. Yeah? And then, let me get it right for you again. You go back here. These ones down the bottom, so I'm on vocab chapter 13. On the bottom of the left-hand page, all those nouns there, just 4 of them, those 4 nouns belong in our masculine only third declension noun group. Okay, go back to chapter 13. We haven't looked at these nouns here yet. That's fine. We'll come back to them. You see they're the neuter nouns. We're not going to deal with them. We'll come back to neuter nouns next week. We're just trying to get our head around these first 3 groups now. Does that help, Henry?
Yes. Sorry, I was it's just difficult to follow the screens, but now I've just marked them all in pencil. So thank you. Now
Cool.
I know.
Awesome. No worries. It's key. We've told you this from the very start. You don't just have to know what the word means. You have to know which box it belongs to. That's the massive key when it comes to noun. You have to be able to play pin the noun on the box, in the box, right? You should be able to do that with every single noun because every single noun fits somewhere on that table when it comes to Greek, right? And that's what we're trying to do. We're just filling in a few more boxes on that table for you. So when you learn your third declension nouns, you need to learn them as they are in the vocab, the nominative singular form, the genitive singular form, and the article, right? So your vocab should have aster, asteros, ho on the one side, and then you flip it over and it's going to say star, right? You need to have all that information there as your vocab card. And then you need to put that vocab box in the third declension noun unisex box, and you need to put your polis ones in your third declension noun feminine only box, and you need to put your basileus ones in your third declension only masculine only box. Is that making sense? Got to get your head around that. Any other questions? Just in terms of trying to get your head around this. Gift.
Okay, Steve. So what about the reflexive pronoun they take? Are they taking the same as the understanding of the previous nouns, or they differ?
For a reflexive pronoun,
For them, yeah, they say who
yeah,
or
well,
which
the
or
reflexive
something like that.
pronoun will be exactly the same because it has to agree in case and gender. Sorry, it has to agree in person, number, and gender as the antecedent. So if it's a feminine antecedent, then it'll be the feminine relative pronoun that you've learned. The relative pronoun, the articles, the third person pronouns, all those things, none of them are going to change. None of this changes. All that grammar is still exactly the same. It's just that these third declension nouns have got a different way of telling you whether they are nominative or accusative or genitive or dative to what we've met before. The patterns, the paradigms are completely different. But yeah, the article's still going to be the same. Your third person pronoun's going to still be the same. Your reflexive pronouns all still going to be the same.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Well, there's just one last little thing that I want to touch on when it comes to these groups of nouns. If you're still with me, I hope so. It's been a lot, I realise that. But one last quick thing before we leave today, and that, as I said earlier, the third declension nouns are basically a bit of a hodgepodge of all the words that aren't in first declension or second declension nouns, because the third declension is all we've got, right? So it has to fit whatever word we have that isn't in the first declension and the second declension has to fit in the third declensions somewhere. And so we do have a few words that are kind of shoved into the third declension noun category just because that's the best place for them to fit, even though they don't quite fit perfectly. In other words, we have third declension nouns that in themselves are a little bit irregular. They don't fit exactly into one of the boxes that we want them to. They're a little bit different. And one such group of words are the family words. Words like father and mother. So I'm back here. Oh no, hang on, I need to share my screen. Back here with you in vocab chapter 12, right down the bottom. Remember, this whole group here is our unisex nouns. All these words belong in our unisex nouns because they're all going to behave like Aster does. But I just want to highlight to you that these three words down the bottom here, family words like daughter and mother and father, for instance, son is not in there, is it? Because we know son. We met son a long, long time ago. In fact, I think we met son on the first day of summer school. Huios. Yeah, it's a nice little second declension masculine noun, just like logos. So it's not in this group. But daughter and mother and father, they're here. And the truth is that they don't behave exactly like Aster does, but they behave close enough for them to be lumped into this same box as well. They behave close enough to be there, but they're not exactly the same. So let me just show you again what we look at here, because this is a stare. This is what we learned earlier. This is our third declension unisex noun. This is how it behaves. Aster, astera, asteros, asteri, asteres, asteras, asteron, astersin. This is what we learned before. But let me just put next to that pater. Now we put it in this group, and you can sort of see why, because it's very similar. Pater, a, os, e, s, as, on, sin. It's got exactly the same endings. A, os, e, s, as, on, sin. It's got exactly the same endings all the way down, and that's kind of nice. And you can see why we want to lump it together with aster, because it does basically behave exactly the same way. But you just notice here, this is astera, and it's patera, right? Asteros, but then we've just got patros. We'd expect this to be pateros, but it's not. It's just patros. And asteri and patri. We'd expect that to be pateri as well. Come down here. We're all good again. Asteres, pateres. Asteras, pateras. Asteron, pateron. Astersin, patresin. Okay, so we've lost our epsilon out of here, and we've got an alpha in here. So you can kind of see why we'd want to put it in our third declension unisex nouns, because it behaves like the third declension unisex nouns far more than it does behave like any other noun. And it pretty much is exactly the same in terms of the endings, at least. The endings are exactly the same. But there's a few little funky vowel dropouts going on here, and just one dropout and add in down the bottom here that makes it just a little bit different, even within the group of unisex nouns. Now, if I were you, I wouldn't worry too much about that. I wouldn't spend your time stressing and focusing about that. I would learn pater and the other group words that we just learned as well, mother and daughter. I would learn them just as in my vocab. I'd put them there together in their group, in their unisex group, learn that they behave exactly like us there, but have in the back of my mind that they are a little bit different in the way that these vowels behave, just for the genitive and dative singular. The endings are exactly the same. You're not likely to get tripped up by that when you're out in the wild. If you learnt that pater behaves like aster and it's a third declension unisex noun, and you find patros out in the wild, you're not likely to get tripped up by that and go, hang on, but they're supposed to be, you're just going to remember, oh yeah, I remember mother, father, and daughter, just a little bit different in those ones. But I recognize that as my third declension genitive singular ending, and I know exactly what I'm talking about here. But for full disclosure, I need to let you know that pater, and the good news is mother and daughter behave exactly the same as pater does, that it just behaves just that tiny little bit differently. But apart from that, nothing that's a big disaster. Okay, any final questions on that third declension now stuff? Okay, well, let me just say then that if you're feeling like this is a lot and you've started to lose it, then can I say to you, please don't panic. I remember vividly when I first learned Greek, my first year Greek lecturer saying to me at exactly this moment in the course, I can tell by the looks on all of your faces, although I can't because you're all got your videos off, but that's okay, that feels like this is just, you're freaking out right now, okay? It was kind of, Greek was kind of okay, and but when we got to this point now, when we start learning third declension nouns, everything starts just getting a little bit too, it's just too much. And your head's starting to explode. And the way my Greek lecturer described it, I think it was a really good description, is like the Greek fog is setting in. And the fog has just come over your brain, over your head, and you can't see anything clearly anymore. And I mention that because that is common for almost every single person who's ever learnt first year Greek. So if you're feeling like, wow, this is just, man, my brain's feeling all foggy and this is too much for me and I don't know how I'm going to get my head around all this, please don't panic. You're in good company. Every single person who's ever learned Greek has hit the Greek fog whenever they've come to learning irregular verbs and third declension nouns. It is the time that the Greek fog sets in. It's very, very common. But let me promise you and remind you that today's hard Greek is 3 weeks times easy Greek. And just like any other fog, the fog will lift and the sun will shine brightly again if you keep working at it. That's all I ask you. And I know it's even harder under the current circumstances. The way we are at the moment, the fog is even thicker than normal. And I get that and I appreciate that. But trust me, I promise you, the fog will lift. This will all make sense again if you just keep working at it. Key is to realize we haven't actually learned any new grammar really at all today. We're just learning a whole stack new paradigms. That's all it is. Just more paradigms, just different ways that different groups of nouns tell you whether they are nominative, accusative, or genitive, or dative, or singular, or plural. Just a few more paradigms. The grammar that we've learned that's foundational to everything we're doing is still exactly the same. Today's hard week is 3 weeks times easy Greek. The fog will lift. So keep at it, keep working at it. Start trying to get these paradigms under your belt. I will put up on in Google Classroom a new paradigm sheet for you because you need to get your head around third declension nouns. And so I will put up this new paradigm sheet that's going to give you your third declension noun paradigms, your new paradigms that we just met, your unisex third declension noun paradigms, your austere paradigms, your feminine only third declension noun paradigm, polis, and your masculine only third declension noun, basileus. That'll be in your Google Classroom. I'll put it up in the paradigms section for you. And like always, there'll be a blank sheet for you to practice, print out, and practice as many times as you can to start getting these paradigms under your belt. You should also be continuing to work on your table of principal parts and using your time to get that under your belt. Let's work on the next 10, the top 20 principal parts you should know. And these third declension paradigms, you need to get them under your head as well. And start increasing your vocab. All right, vocab up to and including chapter 12 is definitely on the cards. We've been moving too slowly, which has been nice for you, I know, but we need to keep moving. So vocab up to and including chapter 12 now should be a part of the vocab you learn. These new paradigms for the third declension nouns are something you should be learning, and you need to continue to learn your table of principal parts. I think that's probably enough to be busy, as you think. So anything else from anybody else? Any other questions about what we are doing and what we should be doing? Also keep working on your translation homework. I've put that up for you as well. So come back to class on Friday with verses 9 to 11 of Mark chapter 1 translated and ready to talk about. I will post later in the week my video of translating verses 9 to 11. So you've got lots to keep you busy on. Greek is going to not stop coming. It'll keep coming. So keep on top of it. Otherwise, it'll snowball badly for you. Any other questions, comments on what is happening or what we've learned today? Otherwise, we'll call it a day.
Hello, Steve.
Yeah, Sammy.
Yeah, I think it is so helpful, like, to learn all these third declension, and what I just want to ask is from the previous lessons that we learned, like the principal parts. So you haven't talked about the present, and yet the present, let me say the present tense all ends with omega. So I don't know the declination, like, are they declining the same or there's changes?
No, they're exactly the same. That's the good news, right? The present tense is exactly how you've already learned it. No problems there at all. There's nothing irregular about the present tense. They just behave.
They're
like
following
that.
Are they following the luo verb?
Exactly. So even those verbs that are irregular. Okay, now let me get this. You've asked the question, so let me answer it for you. Even the verbs that are irregular in their aorist and their future tense are still regular, normal, no problems in the present tense. So you don't have to worry about that. Exactly right. They just behave exactly like you wanted them to behave in the present tense. That's no problem. The stem's going to be the same. Everything's going to be exactly the same in the present tense. Also, actually, and this is key. So let me just get this up, and I'll talk about this as soon as you ask it, Semi. Let me get this up for us to look at, the table of regular verbs. Actually, the truth is, and this is a good truth, they're not just the same in the present tense, but they're actually also the same in the imperfect tense as well. Okay? So you've learned, you got your table of principal parts, for instance, and it's got, here we go, I've got a pen back. Okay, your table of principal parts. We've got a, I lost my pen. Okay, we've got an aorist column in your table of principal parts, and it'll cover the aorist active. That's okay. We've got a future column, and that'll cover the way that it behaves in the future. And we've got a present column, which means the present stem there that you've learned is exactly the same across the present and the imperfect as well. It'll never change in the imperfect. The present stem and the imperfect stem are always exactly the same, and they are always regular. That's not a problem. So that's why we don't have, why your table of principal parts does not have, like, it's got a present column, it's got a future column and an aorist column. It doesn't have an imperfect column. And the reason why is because the present and the imperfect are always the same. They're always regular. Doesn't matter what verb it is. Doesn't matter how messed up the verb is. It doesn't change in the present and the imperfect. That, by the way, is why, if you cast your mind back a long way, you'll remember when Duff put this table together for you, he had present, and then he had future, and then he had imperfect and aorist. And I said to you way back then, trust me, that's a bad way to learn it. We want to learn present and imperfect together, and then future and middle. And this is the reason why we made that change all that long ago, and why Duff was a bad idea to do it. Because the present and the imperfect are all the same stem in your table of principal parts for irregular verbs. They'll never change. They're always the same. And then you've got a future stem and an aorist stem as well. So yeah, does that answer your question, Sammy?
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions before we call it a day? Class is up, and you guys need to get to another class with Jono. Okay, no worries, team. You got lots to work on, lots to be getting your head around in terms of paradigms, table of principal parts, vocab. Keep working on it. I will upload all these lessons back to the classroom for anyone who dropped out. And also, I will see you on Friday for our next translation class. Work on your translation with your groups throughout the week. Come to class ready with a completed translation for Mark 1, verses 9 to 11. And watch me do the translation video before class and come with any questions. Otherwise, I'll see you then. Cheers, guys.